When Rachel heard Sarah's agonized scream echoing off the granite walls, her Air Force Pararescue training kicked in automatically. Assess the casualty, stabilize for evacuation, prepare for technical rescue under extreme conditions. But she was 400 feet up a cliff face with no backup, no medical equipment, and a best friend whose survival depended on skills she'd spent 4 years trying to forget. Welcome to Secret Human Stories. Before I tell you this incredible story of hidden military rescue expertise and life-saving operations performed on a vertical cliff face, tell me in the comments if you or anyone in your family or circle of friends has military service background, and if so, what branch or role they served in. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. Because sometimes the most skilled rescue specialists are teaching rock climbing techniques, waiting for the moment when their training can save a life that no conventional rescue team can reach. 11:47 a.m., September 22nd. Devil's Tower, Wyoming. 400 feet above the Wyoming plains on one of America's most challenging climbing routes. Rachel Martinez and her best friend Sarah Kim were completing the final pitch of a technical climb when everything went catastrophically wrong. Sarah was leading the climb, placing protection and securing the route, when a granite hold the size of a dinner plate broke away from the cliff face. The rock failure sent Sarah into a pendulum fall that slammed her into the granite wall with devastating force before the climbing rope arrested her descent onto a narrow ledge 120 feet below. The impact was horrific. Rachel could hear the distinctive crack of breaking ribs, the wet sound of internal trauma, and worst of all, the sudden silence that indicated Sarah had lost consciousness from the combination of impact injuries and potential head trauma. Sarah, talk to me. Rachel's voice echoed off the granite monolith, but there was no response from the motionless figure on the ledge below. Rachel's mind was instantly calculating impossible rescue scenarios. They were 400 feet up a vertical cliff face on a route that required technical climbing skills to access. The nearest road was 3 miles away through terrain that would challenge experienced rescue teams. Even if she could somehow contact emergency services, helicopter evacuation from Devil's Tower required specialized high-altitude rescue capabilities that most emergency services didn't possess. But Rachel Martinez wasn't really a climbing guide. Not entirely. Rachel secured her anchor system and began the complex rappel to reach Sarah's position, her movements displaying the kind of precision and speed that had nothing to do with civilian climbing instruction and everything to do with combat rescue operations under extreme conditions. Sarah, it's Rachel. I'm coming to you. Stay with me. When Rachel reached the ledge, what she found confirmed her worst medical assessment. Sarah was unconscious with obvious spinal trauma, multiple rib fractures, and internal bleeding that was creating the kind of medical emergency that required immediate surgical intervention and helicopter evacuation to a trauma center. But they were on a granite wall 400 feet above the ground, with no medical equipment, no communication, and no way for conventional rescue teams to reach them before Sarah died from her injuries. Rachel knelt beside her best friend and felt for vital signs while her military training took complete control. Sarah, this is Rachel. I'm Staff Sergeant Rachel Martinez, Air Force Pararescue, retired. I specialize in high-altitude medical evacuation under combat conditions. You're going to live because I know how to get you off this cliff. Sarah's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and filled with pain. Rachel. I can't feel my legs. I think my back is broken. Sarah, listen to my voice. You have spinal trauma and internal injuries that I can treat, but I need you to stay conscious and follow my instructions exactly. I'm going to stabilize your spine, treat your internal bleeding, and then get you off this cliff using techniques I learned rescuing downed pilots. From her climbing pack, Rachel retrieved items that seemed like normal climbing gear but could serve extraordinary medical purposes in the hands of someone with pararescue training. Climbing tape became spinal immobilization. Carabiners became traction devices. Her climbing rope became a complex pulley system for vertical patient evacuation. Most importantly, Rachel carried emergency medications in her first aid kit that went far beyond normal climbing safety supplies, military-grade pain management and trauma stabilization drugs that weren't supposed to exist in civilian climbing guides equipment. Rachel, how do you know how to do this? Sarah gasped as Rachel began the delicate process of spinal stabilization on a granite ledge barely wide enough for two people. 6 years Air Force Pararescue. I've extracted wounded pilots from crashed aircraft in Afghanistan, performed high-altitude medical evacuations in combat zones, and rescued people from places where conventional medical support couldn't reach. This cliff is dangerous, but it's not enemy territory. Rachel began the most challenging medical procedure of her civilian life, treating spinal trauma and internal injuries while preparing for a technical rescue evacuation that would require her to function as medic, rescue coordinator, and evacuation specialist simultaneously. Her pararescue training had prepared her for exactly this scenario, saving lives in extreme environments where patient evacuation required specialized techniques that combined military medical knowledge with technical rescue skills that exceeded normal emergency response capabilities. Sarah, I'm going to give you something for the pain, then I'm going to immobilize your spine using climbing gear adapted for medical stabilization. After that, I'm going to rig a rope system that will allow me to evacuate you off this cliff using techniques designed for rescuing aircrew from crashed helicopters. Rachel administered military-grade pain medication using techniques learned during pararescue medical training, then began the complex process of converting their climbing equipment into a medical evacuation system capable of safely transporting a spinal trauma patient down 400 feet of vertical granite. The medical stabilization took 43 minutes. Rachel used climbing protection, rope systems, and improvised medical devices to create spinal immobilization that would protect Sarah's injuries during the technical evacuation that would follow. The evacuation system was even more complex. Rachel rigged a counterweight pulley system using their climbing ropes, anchor points she'd installed during their ascent, and mechanical advantage systems that allowed her to control Sarah's descent while rappelling alongside her to provide continuous medical monitoring. "Rachel, I'm scared," Sarah whispered as Rachel prepared to begin the evacuation. "Sarah, I've extracted wounded soldiers from places that made this cliff look like a playground. You're going to survive because I have 6 years of experience rescuing people from situations that should have been impossible. Trust my training." The evacuation took 2 hours and 17 minutes. Rachel lowered Sarah 400 feet down Devil's Tower while maintaining spinal immobilization, monitoring vital signs, and adjusting medical treatment as conditions changed during the technical descent. At the base of the cliff, Rachel's satellite phone finally found signal, and she contacted emergency services with the kind of professional medical report that immediately identified her as someone with extensive trauma training. "This is Rachel Martinez requesting immediate medical helicopter evacuation. I have a female patient, age 29, with L2, L3 spinal fractures, multiple rib fractures, and internal bleeding. Patient is stabilized but requires immediate surgical intervention at a Level 1 trauma center." The Flight for Life helicopter reached Devil's Tower 37 minutes later. When the flight medic examined Sarah and Rachel's medical stabilization, he couldn't believe the quality of spinal immobilization and trauma care that had been performed on a cliff face. "Ma'am, who provided this medical treatment?" "The woman who got me off that cliff," Sarah replied weakly, pointing at Rachel. Flight medic David Rodriguez examined the improvised medical equipment and immediately recognized work that exceeded civilian first aid capabilities. "Are you medical?" "Air Force Pararescue, retired," Rachel answered simply. "Ma'am, this spinal stabilization and evacuation is exceptional work. You saved this woman's life with medical care that most hospital emergency departments couldn't have provided better." At Denver Health Medical Center, neurosurgeon Dr. Maria Santos examined Sarah's injuries and Rachel's field medical treatment with amazement. "Ms. Martinez, your spinal immobilization prevented what could have been permanent paralysis. Without your intervention, this patient would have died from her injuries before any rescue team could have reached her." Dr. Santos pulled Rachel aside privately. "Where did you learn spinal trauma medicine?" "Air Force Pararescue Medical Training. 6 years extracting wounded aircrew from crashed aircraft in combat zones where conventional medical evacuation was impossible." "Rachel, have you considered returning to emergency medicine? We need trauma specialists with your combination of medical skills and rescue expertise." Rachel's response reflected the complexity of transitioning from military rescue operations to civilian emergency medicine. "Doc, I left rescue work because I needed peace. But I guess some skills don't retire when the people you care about need them. 3 days later, Rachel received a call from her former teammate, Master Sergeant Mike Thompson, who had heard about the Devil's Tower rescue through Air Force Pararescue networks. Rachel, word is you performed a technical cliff rescue with full medical stabilization. Once a PJ, always a PJ. Mike, Sarah was dying. I couldn't just watch my best friend die when I knew how to save her. That's exactly what I'd expect from you. You honored the pararescue motto, these things we do, that others may live, even in civilian life. Now for the background that made this vertical miracle possible. Staff Sergeant Rachel Martinez had served 6 years with the Air Force's 58th Rescue Squadron, specializing in personnel recovery operations in Afghanistan and other classified locations from 2015 to 2021. Her military training as a pararescue jumper, the PJ, represented some of the most demanding rescue and medical training in the U.S. military. Air Force Pararescue training combines advanced medical education, high-altitude rescue techniques, combat diving, mountaineering, and tactical operations. Rachel's specialized training included spinal trauma management, high-altitude medical procedures, technical rescue in extreme environments, and helicopter evacuation coordination under combat conditions. During her Air Force service, Rachel had conducted 89 combat rescue missions, successfully extracted 127 wounded personnel from hostile environments, and earned a reputation among Special Operations Forces as someone who could reach survivors that other rescue teams couldn't access. Her specialty had been what pararescue teams call high-angle rescue with medical intervention. Extracting wounded personnel from crashed aircraft, damaged buildings, or natural disasters that required both technical rescue skills and advanced medical treatment during evacuation. The psychological demands of pararescue service were extraordinary. Every rescue mission represented someone whose survival depended entirely on Rachel's ability to reach them, provide medical treatment under extreme conditions, and evacuate them to safety using techniques that combined military medical training with technical rescue expertise. Rachel's transition out of military service in 2021 had been challenging. PTSD from rescue operations where she'd been unable to save everyone, survivors' guilt from air crew members who died despite her heroic efforts, and the difficulty of finding civilian work that utilized her rescue skills without triggering combat-related stress responses. Civilian rock climbing instruction had seemed perfect, using her technical rope skills and leadership abilities to teach people outdoor adventure, sharing her love of vertical environments, and providing positive experiences that created joy rather than trauma. For 4 years, Rachel had convinced herself that her military rescue skills were unnecessary artifacts that had no place in her new civilian identity. But some training never truly retires, especially when it involves saving lives in extreme environments where conventional rescue capabilities are inadequate. Sarah's climbing accident had created exactly the kind of rescue scenario that Rachel's pararescue training had prepared her to handle: medical trauma in an inaccessible location where patient survival depended entirely on the rescuer's specialized skills. Rachel's story teaches us that military rescue training creates lifelong guardians who carry their life-saving capabilities wherever they go. The pararescue jumper who once extracted wounded pilots from Afghan mountains found a way to continue that mission on American cliffs, using her expertise to save her best friend instead of fellow service members. 6 months after the accident, Rachel received a letter from Sarah that would change her understanding of her post-military purpose. Rachel, Sarah wrote from her rehabilitation hospital, "I want you to know that I'm starting a foundation to train civilian rescue teams in military medical techniques. You prove that lives can be saved in places where conventional rescue can't reach if the right person has the right training." Sarah's foundation, the Martinez High-Angle Rescue Institute, now trains civilian rescue teams in military medical techniques, with Rachel serving as chief instructor. The program teaches mountain rescue teams, search and rescue organizations, and emergency responders advanced medical skills that can save lives during technical rescues in extreme environments. Today, Rachel Martinez continues working as a rock climbing guide in Wyoming, but now she also serves as a technical rescue instructor who teaches other guides and rescue teams how to handle medical emergencies during high-angle operations. Her clients know about her Air Force pararescue background and appreciate having someone whose military expertise provides safety capabilities that conventional climbing instruction cannot match. Rachel's story demonstrates that military rescue service doesn't end with discharge, it evolves into civilian rescue readiness that can save lives in environments where conventional emergency services cannot operate effectively. The pararescue jumper who once saved aircrew under enemy fire found a way to continue saving lives on American cliffs, using her skills to protect civilians instead of fellow warriors. Sometimes rescue comes from helicopters extracting wounded soldiers from combat zones. Sometimes it comes from teaching adventure seekers how to climb safely. Sometimes it comes from using military rescue training to save your best friend when her accident occurs in a place where no one else can reach her. Rachel Martinez learned to provide all three forms of life-saving service, honoring both her identity as a warrior rescuer and her calling as someone who shares the joy of vertical adventure while maintaining the capability to perform miracles when accidents threaten the lives of people she cares about. The climbing guide who used to be a pararescue jumper became the technical rescue instructor who still saves lives when accidents happen in places where conventional rescue teams cannot reach. Her hands never forgot how to rescue, whether they were controlling helicopter hoists or rigging climbing anchors. American outdoor enthusiasts can pursue their vertical adventures with confidence knowing that warriors like Rachel Martinez have traded their military rescue equipment for climbing gear but never surrendered their commitment to keeping people alive when accidents occur in the extreme environments they love to explore.